Hey guys and girls, Poketin King here back with another Flesh and Blood video. Today I want to talk a little bit about where Flesh and Blood is in, coming to the second half of 2024 now. So we are in July, so we've hit that midway point. We've had two sets come out. Obviously we got our third set coming out. We've had the start of armory sets. Obviously we got more armory decks coming out. We got strike decks as well, which an interesting one, which I'll talk about today. But I wanted to talk a little bit about. There's a lot of conversations that I had, whether or not Flesh and Blood are doing enough in terms of marketing. Will Flesh and Blood be a top 5 TCG? Does it being an indie, a niche game, does that stop it? Is that the hindrance? And what can be done? If anything needs to be done. So we'll cover all that in today's video. So it's a topic that's kind of brought up quite a lot, and I generally seem to be engaged in those topics, every sort of week or two. It seems to come up quite a lot. Flesh and Blood is obviously in a really good place right now. Probably one of the best places that we've been since the game came out. And I think, we're in Fab 3.0, and I think you can distinctly tell what 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0 in terms of the direction the company's gone. So Fab 1.0 was very collector and investor driven. That was when the game first came out. Obviously, James White, LSS, had come towards, people like Rudy from Alpha Investments and Saint from Fabled Hunters, as well as some others, and said, look, we're going to be releasing this game. We'd like to get you involved. And that's why early on you had these investors or these whales in, because they were asked by Flesh and Blood, by James White and LSS, to kind of help spread the word about the game, and that's really important, and that really helped, obviously, and a lot of those people are still involved in this game very much today. Saint is probably one of the most known champions of this game in terms of like getting it out there, advocating for it, and I know Rudy's had a little bit of a rocky journey throughout, but I think it's quite clear that he does enjoy the game. Obviously, he does understand it. And then we had Fab 2.0, which felt more player driven. It definitely felt more focused on players. That's when we saw a lot of collectors and investors leave. We kind of had a bit of, the Fab winter after the Monarch stuff. Tales of Aria, Everfest came out. We had, that Fab 2.0, which was when we didn't have first edition. And it was just, we've got Outsiders Dynasty, Uprising, Dusk Till Dawn, Bright Lights, those kind of sets. And now I feel like I feel like Heavy Hitters is Fab 3.0. I mean, some people might say that's not, but I do feel like this year is definitely Fab 3.0. And that's where I feel like we have a good balance of players and collectors. This is a topic that I've talked about on the channel 100 times, and it's always a topic that causes debate. It causes, good conversation. Sometimes there are comments that are probably very emotionally driven, and probably not really needed. I think sometimes people need to take a step back, think about what they're saying, and kind of rationalize why they're feeling the way they do. But accountability obviously doesn't always happen, unfortunately, in this world. But it is a topic, nonetheless, that is always going to be talked about. And I feel like we're in a really good place here with collectors and players. Now, I'm not saying it's perfect. Don't get me wrong. It's not perfect. I know there's more that could be done, that could be better either side. But I'm happy with where it is. I'm really happy with the game in general. It's from a point of view of myself as I've been a big collector since the start. I would say within the last 12 months, I've probably spent about 6 figures in the game. Now that isn't just personal collection stuff. That is buying a lot of collections from my store. I am a single seller, and I buy a lot of collections. There's things that I might cherry pick myself, and I think, okay, I'd like to add that to my collection. But for the most part, most of it is stuff that I am selling. A lot of collections are bought within the UK, and I have bought collections into the UK to try kind of alleviate the stress on the lack of supply. I know there's a lot of other stores, Thistle Tavern, Mox in the Hole, that do a really good job. Not only of opening new product, in Flesh and Blood, chat at fleshandbloodcards.com, but they all bring product in. They go to events, they buy, and they bring over, and I think that's really good. I think that's a good way of doing it. I try to kind of do as much as I can. I do more than one TCG, but Flesh and Blood, I would say, is my main game. If you follow me on Cardmarket, it's RatheTavernCards. My eBay and my website, all my socials, Poker Tinking and stuff. I do very much talk about this. I'm very honest with it, especially in the Discords and stuff. I'm very transparent with the sort of things that I do. The sort of collections that I buy. I've done over 200 collections now within 12 months, which I think is pretty good considering the size of the game, especially in the UK at least anyway. But that's predominantly what I do, and obviously, yeah, I've bought bits over the last 12 months for my collection. Cold foil, legendaries, WTR, alpha, bits and stuff like that. But predominantly it is collections, and I think that we are definitely still got a lot of collectors, but the players are happy as well. I think we're slowly moving away from a lot of the generic legendaries that have kind of demanded these quite high prices now. I mean, bar the Tunic in the first set in WTR. In fact, I think in the first three sets, bar Tunic, no legendaries above £100, and I think the foil Tunic's only just above that. I think Stormstriders is around 70. But most of them have kind of dropped, and they're not at all-time lows, but they're relatively low here. I mean, Arcanite Skullcap is like 25 quid in a rainbow foil. But we obviously still have things like E-Strike, CNC, Art of War, from those early sets that do command, consistent prices. And obviously a lot of the generics from the later sets. I feel like the generic set is slot is extremely powerful. So I understand, but it also means that there's value there when you open product, right? We all want value from when we're opening things. That's just, we're opening things because we want shiny stuff, but most of the time we're going to be selling a lot of the cards that we pull, or trading them at least anyway. I think trading is extremely underrated. I know it's a TCG and I know it seems very simple, but I feel like trading is probably, the most underutilized part of the game. I feel like you can make a fairer deal with trades than you can do with sort of buying and selling sometimes, because you are kind of getting things that you want, and vice versa, the person that you're dealing with is as well. So yeah, I feel like we're in Fab 3.0 now, where we've got a good happy medium that players and collectors are kind of a little bit more at peace. Obviously, we had heavy hitters and part of the misfail, and obviously going into Rosetta as well, which is great. What this does as well is, it's going to utilize some of the cards from Tales of Aria, which have been dormant, basically, since all heroes are LL'd and banned. And, there's a lot of cards in there that are essentially have been useless for a while, but now have a part to play in the game. And the game's definitely evolving. I don't know if we're going to get a Fab 4.0. And again, like, this isn't like specifically used by Flesh and Blood. LSS haven't stated this is Fab 3.0, but I think a large part of the community at least have kind of widely accepted this to be a thing. Now, whether or not you include heavy hitters, as I said, or not, it's up to you. But I do think this year was kind of a turn of something new. And it's exciting kind of seeing what they do here. Obviously, the Armory decks are interesting. The Azalea Long looks really good, which is, to have these decks ready out the box to be able to play at Armory is fantastic. Now, whether or not armories are... The problem is when it's off-season, the numbers for armories drop because XP means nothing now. And I think that was... I know that there's a fine level between having armories a grind fest and a place that players can, learn to play and, be included. I feel like there's some players at my local armory that always do grind, and they were grinding for XP, but it never at the expense of teaching and playing with new players. All the experiences that I've ever had personally, bar when I first got in the game, have been positive, and I know that a lot of people that I've spoken to that got into the game have also felt accepted. And that's one of the great things about Fab, right? You hear about the toxicity in Magic the Gathering and Yu-Gi-Oh as well, especially Yu-Gi-Oh. And there's a lot less of that in Fab. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but there's a lot less. It's definitely less like player based, like in terms of player versus player, right? Which is another topic that we've talked about on the channel, player versus collector. But I feel like, bringing these armory decks is really, really helpful. Now, the strike deck, I don't know. I feel like that's just them rebranding the Blitz deck. I don't know. I don't know what the point of that is, to be honest. I obviously have Judgment. I can't say I'm going to reserve Judgment because I do have Judgment, but I'll be interested to see what happens when they release. I think what they did for Partner Misfair with the free Blitz decks, free packs, the playmat in that box, brilliant. That's chef's kiss, that is. That's a beautiful product. Because not only, I mean, you can do it with just one friend or two friends, but the ability to be able to just play out the box. You've got a playmat as well. So you can decide kind of which deck you want to play with, but you've got some extra packs as well. I like products that include extra packs because we all do, right? We all like cracking packs. It's addictive. And it reminds me of like theme decks, in other card games where you get a pack per, Lorcana do it, you get a pack. Pokemon used to do it during the Heart Gold Soul Silver era. And I really like that that's included. I think that would be cool for the armory decks as well if you included one pack of the recent set. Just something a little bit extra. It also helps retain value, right? Because short term, people aren't going to hoard them because there's one pack in it, or people aren't going to buy loads because there's one pack in it. But what it does do long term is it gives people a bit more of a reason to go back to these decks, especially if you have exclusive cards in them. Now, some people are for or against having exclusive cards in decks. I don't really care, I think it's cool, but also I don't mind if there isn't. For me, it doesn't seem like it's a non-issue, to be honest. So, the products that they are releasing, obviously they said they're going to be releasing one product per month. It's great. Rosetta looks so far great. It looks amazing. But I feel like the game definitely needs some improvement here. Obviously, we need casual play like now. We needed it yesterday, because is Fab ever not going to be a niche game? I don't know. I'm not sure. I think it could quite well just be a niche TCG. I don't think it will be top 5. Certainly not top 3 ever, because it's not a huge IP backed game, and I don't think the intent from LSS was ever for it to be challenging Magic the Gathering. I could be wrong here. If someone from LSL is watching this and they can correct me, that's fine. But the actions that I've seen anyway up until now, don't look like a game that's wanting to be the best. The biggest even, perhaps. It can still be the best, right? We know that it's one of the most premier games, right? Competitive premier games. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay not being a top 5 TCG. Because I think things get lost in translation when you get to the top. And you've seen that with other games that have come out, where you might not necessarily not agree with things, but companies like Hasbro, Wizard of the Coast that do Magic, it does feel like it is just churning out product at this point, and it is just churning money. I mean, you had, was it Modern Horizons 3 came out, then Assassin's Creed, and now you got the Bloom Burrow, whatever it is. You got the next set with the animals. The pre-releases of that is in like 3 weeks. It's so quick, it's ridiculous. So, I think Fab there's things it definitely can improve with that. Marketing, they're obviously doing it. They are improving. I still think that relying on stores to have store champions is a bit of a cop-out. And that is the case. I think most people will agree that the people that are pushing this game aren't always the LGS. It's generally a community member that is advocating for the game. Maybe someone that got in early, or maybe, someone that might be friends with the owners of the store or whatever. But they're the ones pushing the game. I know at least a lot of the armories that I've ever been to, or the people that I know, there are generally 1 or 2 community members that are spending a lot of their free time building up decks, building up play sets for new players. They're the ones that are pushing it. They're the ones that are running it. And that takes a lot of time out. Remember, they're doing this for free out of their own time. So, a lot of respect for those that are doing that. I feel like they're unsung heroes of the game, because they're the ones that are spending all their free time, really kind of helping this game flourish. They're the ones that are, reaching out to LGSs. They're the ones that, at times probably begging LGSs to run events. A lot of them give out their own cards for free. So, if you know somebody who is one, say thank you, honestly. Maybe buy them a drink or a coffee. But also just, recognize that what they're doing for this game, because if all the people that were community members in this game decided to go, I don't want to play this anymore, and dropped it, I probably would imagine 50% of the stores across the world would probably stop doing events. It might take a couple of weeks, but I feel like a lot of them would stop doing armories, because a lot of the stores do not have the capacity in terms of labor to spend that much time pushing it, and being, a sort of community champion. It's also spreading awareness of the game, right? A lot of those are the ones that are on social media saying, come on guys, come down to store, Tuesday night we're doing armory, we're going to be doing this, here's what we can win. And I don't think this should be expected of people. Now, I'm not saying this doesn't happen in other games. I do it for One Piece. But with One Piece, it's a big IP and it draws people in a lot easier than it does Flesh and Blood. Where Flesh and Blood is a niche IP, it's already cut off a large portion of the population by not selling in big box stores like Walmart, Target, supermarkets, those kind of things. Even bookstores, only having it at game stores. Obviously, online stores can't sell product. They can't buy product anyway. So you're kind of cutting off a lot of the people. Half the distros can't stock it because they didn't stock at the start, and now then you won't let them stock it because they said no at the start. How many people have come forward with a brand new game idea? Most of the time, there's too many of them that you can't say yes to all of them. Some of them might be amazing, but unfortunately, you do not have the capacity and resources to say yes to all of them. So there's definitely, that side of it that needs to be relooked. I think assessing kind of where the game's going, they're probably doing this already, let's be honest. And I'm not saying the direction they're not going in now isn't good, but they could be doing more. We're sort of in 5 years into the game now. And if you look at the countries that adopted the game early, what is it looking like there? Because the player base in the UK isn't bigger than it was 2-3 years ago. Is the player base in the US bigger than it was 2-3 years ago? Probably not. Okay, the player base is bigger in Southeast Asia. The player base might be bigger in certain European countries, but at the expense of the game stagnating in other areas. And I'm told that they have people localized that are kind of visiting, but I don't see it personally. So there's definitely more that can be done by LSS. I think the casual play side of it needs to happen within the next 12 months for this game to kind of break out of that. When you travel to card stores, and I did this last year, and I did talk about this in a lot of videos, and people are doing it now in America and realizing they'll call up stores, they'll visit stores, and 99% of stores either don't carry Fab or they carried it up until, a lot of the time it's Monarch, Toa, and Everfest. That's what they have. They carried it up until then, and then, the first edition stuff stopped, and funny enough, box sales dropped. We know this because so much product was destroyed. So the demand, wasn't there. Now, if you're an LGS, okay, a lot of stores are probably lazy. I get that. A lot of people say this. But at the same time, you're going to sell what sells, right? So if you're buying in Fab and it's just sitting on the shelf and nobody wants it, Fab is a bit of a harder sell. You've got to really try to sell Fab. But why would you when you can just sell other games and they just go off the shelf? You don't have to try. So you have to understand, the profit margins for a lot of stores here are very small, especially these brick and mortar stores. They've got so many overheads to think about. So stocking a game that isn't a big IP is a risk, and that is reason why a lot of stores won't do it, simply because of that. So what happens if all the stores in the US and UK that could stock Fab or want to stock Fab? Where's the new player base coming from? I know so many armories have stopped. I know loads. I know areas that have completely gone for players. And a lot of those players just won't go playing. A lot of them stopped going to armories because XP, became irrelevant. So they're playtesting at home, or they're just not playing. Or a hero hits LL and they just give up the game. So that's the problem that I feel like we face now. And I've talked about the UK player scene and the UK scene in general. there's definitely a lot more that needs to be done here. I think the guys, there's a lot of really good stores here. Living Realms are fantastic. Shout out to Fistful of Dice, my local LGS. That Fistful of Dice, honestly, is probably the best card store I've ever been to. They're just fantastic. They really care. They're passionate, and they're willing to adapt and change, as a card store should do. And that's why they flourish, and that's why whether it's 12 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon or it's 9 o'clock on a Friday night, they're packed, which is great to see. But there's a lot of stores. Spellbound recently opened up. He is a big part of the Flesh and Blood community. You've got Dark Sphere, obviously Living Realms, as I mentioned. There is so many stores. Thistle Tavern, obviously Mox and Hole. There's so many great stores that are advocating for Flesh and Blood. They're the ones that I think should be rewarded by LSS, more so than just armory kits, because it's not easy to kind of push Flesh and Blood when it's not a big IP. And another topic I kind of want to talk about here was, because it's something that's kind of come up recently, was that a certain individual bought. I'm not going to kind of dox this person either, but they bought, and I wouldn't even say it's a large amount, like 10 cases of a set from a certain seller on TCG Player, and he outed them in a Discord, and it gets people talking. Now, I don't think people's purchases should ever be outed. That's private information. That's their own. What people do with their money at the end of the day is up to them. I don't think it's for you to decide what they should and shouldn't do. I see this in every game, honestly. I've started seeing it in Star Wars recently, when people are starting to out people. Like, I had it myself, because I was opening up, I opened a case up, and people are like, well, how did you get product? Well, you're not a brick and mortar store. Oh, I can see why stores can't get enough product. And it's just like, just get over yourself, like, grow up. Like, what people do with their money doesn't matter to you. That's kind of something I just want to bring up because it was on the subject of it. But I feel like Fab can do more, honestly, and I think that's why some people do feel a little bit frustrated sometimes, because we know the potential. Look, Flesh and Blood has the potential to be the greatest card game ever made. The artwork is on par, if not better, than any other game made. That's my opinion. Again, it's going to be opinion based, right? That's why I got into the game. The art that Magic the Gathering used to do was amazing. There's some great artwork. One Piece does some amazing stuff. Weiss, Pokemon, Union Arena, Yu-Gi-Oh. But I feel like Flesh and Blood really do take the cake with that. And I feel like the how competitive the game is. This is, if you want to be a competitive TCG player, I feel like Fab is the one. I think the price support is fantastic. Obviously, they upped it this year, and it's exciting just to kind of see it grow. I think the idea of gold foils, I was trying to explain this to someone about graded cards in a game, how you can play with graded cards, and how gold foils come pre-graded by PCG, which I think is just absolutely fun. It blows people's minds because they're not aware of this, but more needs to be pushed out about how amazing this is. Come to an event, try win your hand at getting a gold foil, a black envelope card. How cool is that? That's amazing. No other game does anything like that, where you potentially don't know what you're winning. Even going to events, the player packages where you get, the promos and the playmats and the tickets. I think that's fantastic. I haven't got a Fab playmat here. This is the Pokemon one right here. But the Fab playmats are fantastic. They really are. Maybe we all have too many of them now, because it felt like it was very hard at the start to get them, and now there's so many of them. But the potential, and the sleeves as well, I think are fantastic. Working with Dragon Shield is great, but more needs to be shouted out about this. And I feel like this was one of the reasons why it's time to not be quiet about Flesh and Blood. Did so well, was because the game needs advocating. We need people to be pushing it more, but LSS need to push it more themselves as well. So maybe they need to sell in big box stores, or maybe not big box, maybe sell in bookstores, like Waterstones or W.H. Smith, or, I don't know what you have, Barnes and Noble in America. Maybe that needs to be a thing. Who knows? Anyway, there's a little rant or conversation about Flesh and Blood. Let me know in the comments below. I'm sure you will. You guys always do. I don't care if you agree with me or not. Just let me know. Because I understand everyone has different opinions, and I really enjoy hearing people's opinions. And if you don't agree with me, even better, because then I have a chance to see it from another point of view, which is, at the end of the day, I make this content based on the knowledge that I have and, opinions I have, but it doesn't mean I'm right just because I'm in front of a camera here making a video. It's just, me putting it out there, right? And getting the conversation talking. Conversation flowing, gets people talking. You never know who might be watching. But as always, hit the links in the description below. We got a Discord. Try to help us get to 100 members. The website, the eBay. There's some like affiliate links and shit in there as well. I shouldn't probably swear in these videos, but I always seem to. And yeah, hit the notification button, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And as always, have a great day.